on. And today, let's start off with some Cowboys and Texans. Let's first start off with recapping the game last week between the Raiders and Texans. Let's go Houston, Nathan.
Yeah, it was a what you expected game going in. The Raiders were just so banged up. They started their third-string quarterback, Connor Cook, and the Texans defense dominated. They forced turnovers. They got 3 interceptions on Cook. Jadeveon Clowney was a monster. That first interception on a tipped screen pass set up the Texans' first touchdown. The defensive line was disruptive. DJ Reader had a sack. They held Oakland's rushing game, which was really their only shot coming in, to 64 yards. The linebackers played well. Whitney Merciless had 2 sacks. McKinney was good against the run, and then the secondary has been ball hawks. This is the second part of the season. They got 2 interceptions, and Jonathan Joseph played really well, and the Raiders didn't really get any deep balls down the field really until the final minutes when it was kind of garbage time. But the big thing, I mean, the offense finally showed up, that much criticized this whole season. I think it was their most complete offensive game of the year. The offensive line, which had really struggled the final couple weeks of the season, they allowed 0 sacks. Brock was solid. He played mistake-free football. He had 90 quarterback rating, threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown. And that's what the Texans need him to be. They need him to be mistake-free and not turn the ball over, especially this week. I will say the running game was not very good. They averaged 2.8 yards per carry. That definitely has to change if the Texans have any hope of winning this week.
Pretty much everything that you said. Brock Osweiler turned in probably his best game of the year. He was able to toss. I'll be honest with you. I didn't watch it all that closely, just because at the end of the day, we all knew that the Texans were going to walk away with this. Just like the Raiders were far too banged up to really mount any sort of competitive opposition. I will say I was a little bit wrong in terms of just like Lamar Miller being the X factor in this. It definitely ended up being Brock Osweiler, who like I just said, he turned in his best performance. But I will say, I as much as I wanted to give them credit, it felt like it was while I wouldn't say it was as boring a game as I was expecting it to be. It was still it still felt like it didn't have as much stakes in it as a playoff game usually does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the outcome was really never in doubt. It got a little nervy in the fourth quarter when the Raiders scored on a touchdown drive, and they were driving down the field again, actually, and the Texans got an interception. But I mean, it was the way Connor Cook came out. He did some okay things, but he was just overwhelmed. It was his first career NFL start, and he was just overmatched. I mean, they kept talking on the broadcast about putting Matt McGloin in. I think John Gruden was talking about it since midway through the second quarter. So there must have been something wrong physically with McGloin, because Jack Del Rio just kept Connor Cook out there. And I mean, he did as best as he could, but I mean, facing the number 1 defense and all the different looks that Romeo Crennel puts out there for a young quarterback, I mean, he really didn't have much of a chance to succeed.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that ended up being his first NFL game, but I mean, tough sledding for it. I hope Connor Cook recovers from that. I mean, I remember the last times. I remember at least the most famous example to me of someone getting their first start at probably the worst time was Garrett Gilbert back in the national championship against Alabama. But again, it just goes back to just how injuries can completely wreck a team's season. I mean, like we said before, this was heading into week 15, and then one bad break to a knee, and it's first round exit for the Raiders. But now let's go into tonight. The Texans take on their week 3 opponent in New England. What's your take on it?
let's lose less badly as we did last time. No, I mean it's really it's. I mean the Texans are a 16-point underdog. I think it's the largest spread in NFL divisional round history. And so really, you look back at that Week 3 matchup. The Patriots were still without Tom Brady, who was serving his 4-game suspension, and they were playing third-string quarterback Jacoby Brissett, and that team won 27-zip. And I mean, I don't really see much different in this game. I mean, they have Tom Brady now. The Patriots offense has really been clicking the final couple weeks of the season. I mean, they lost Gronkowski, and so their offense dipped a little bit in the middle, but I mean, they're right back on track. Like Garrett Blunt running the football, he won a fantasy championship for me. So I mean, I know what he can do. And so as much as I've been talking about their offense, their defense was 8th in the league, and they're third against the run. And so I mean, the Texans really, I mean, their offense is built to run the football, and so the Patriots being so good against the run, they're going to force Brock Osweiler to beat them. And Brock has played well last week. I mean, he did what he was told to do. I mean, the play calling was a little conservative in the second half, but I mean, he's going to have to make throws Patriots defense for the Texans to have any shot to win this game.
Agreed. Not only that, but this Patriots defense, like even though they've pretty much traded away arguably two of their best players in Chandler Jones and Jamie Collins prior and during the season, are still just as dangerous as those that they've won Super Bowls with. Like I believe they're the number one scoring defense in the NFL this season. And they thrive off getting turnovers. I mean, granted, like part of it has to do with the fact that they were able to play the New York Jets twice in the season. But at the same time, this is a defense that thrives off of getting turnovers. And Brock Osweiler has, if he's proven anything this season, is that he's very turnover prone. Malcolm Butler, the former Super Bowl hero, has turned into one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And so he's probably going to be able to shut down DeAndre Hopkins. And just in general, it's just they're going against Bill Belichick, and it's very hard to go against him. Even when it comes to a presidential election, he somehow is able to line up with the eventual winner. So yeah, who do you think wins? Not to spoil it or anything, but who do you think?
I mean, I think me, along with most of Houston, unless you're just a card-carrying, diehard fan, I think they know this is going to be the end of the season tonight. I think the one chance is the Texans defense gets turnovers on Brady, and they're able to hold them under 20 points. The Patriots are 2-7 in the playoffs since 2001 when they scored fewer than 20. The problem is the defense hasn't really traveled this year on the road. They're actually 18th in the league in scoring defense on the road this year. So, I mean, you're going to need a outstanding game, not okay. You need an outstanding game from Osweiler. You need the offensive line to play perfect like they did last week. And then you're going to need your defense to get turnovers and hold the Patriots under 20 points. And I really think stopping LeGarrette Blount, if he gets going, the Texans have no shot. I think if they can hold Blount down, that limits the Patriots' play calling a little bit, and the Texans secondary has shown it can cover great receivers. And I mean, the Patriots and Julian is really shifty, but I mean, they don't really have that like go-to down the field threat that you just throw the ball up and he's going to go get it. So in the end, I don't think that the Texans can stop Blount, and I think this one could get away early.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Although, here's my scenario in which the Texans are able to pull it off. They pull off the upset of the century. They have Bill O'Brien, Romeo Crennel, and I can't remember the offensive coordinator's name, but
George Godsey.
You know what? Yeah, that guy. Yes. You know what all three of those guys have in common outside of working for the Houston Texans right now?
They work for the Patriots.
Exactly. And very much like how the Russians hacked the DNC.
Oh, geez.
Maybe they take a page out of Brady's and Belichick's best friend Trump's playbook, and they're able to hack the playbook of the Patriots. And then they end up out patrioting the Patriots and basically cheat their way into winning and stealing play calls. Very possible. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, I'm gonna get the under on that. I'm gonna take.
Yeah. We got you guys got to go to Ecuador, get snowed. No. Ecuador has Assange. No, Russia's the ones that's housing Snowden. But yeah, you guys got to go to Russia, get Snowden, hack into Brady's PC, and then you got it. You got it down. You guys got it down. But yeah, no, the Texans don't really have a chance in this game. But yeah.
And the one note I'll finally add before we wrap up the Texans for this year is Bill O'Brien, there's been rumors out there, true or untrue, by Jay Glazer first reported it on Fox, that the Texans might part ways with Bill O'Brien at the end of the season if they, have an early playoff exit. When I first heard those rumors, I thought, no way. I mean, we have an owner that he is very reluctant to make changes. We've only had 3 head coaches. We've only fired our head coach after 2 and 14 seasons. We've had the same mediocre general manager for 10 years. And no matter how bad that relationship, our owner was going to bring back Bill O'Brien. It was just a matter of fact if Bill wanted to resign himself just because he and the general manager don't have a great relationship. But he's said this week that he's going to be back next year. So that's a non-story. The team, we'll get into this more as, off season comes, but there's definitely a lot of holes in this team, and they made it to the second round, but this team is so far away from winning a championship, and there's so many more needs that they need to address. But let's move on. Let's talk about the first game today. It's in Atlanta. The Seahawks face the Falcons. It's a rematch of a thrilling game earlier this season. Seattle advanced last weekend really without too much of a problem. Atlanta, they have the number 2 offense in the league, number 1 scoring offense. It's really their offense against Seattle's great defense. How do you see this one turning out?
I think Atlanta wins this game. Not only do they have home field, but just at the end of the day, Seattle has been far too inconsistent, and I think the way that Atlanta matches up like right now with Seattle is that Seattle doesn't have Earl Thomas, so that secondary isn't nearly as good as it once was. And B, I've always felt like the Seattle defense has been susceptible to a very strong run game, and Atlanta has arguably the best 1-2 punch in both Tevin Coleman and Devontae Foreman, or not Devontae. Wait, yeah,
Freeman.
Devontae Freeman. I get those two confused all the time. All apologies. But they'll very easily control the clock. They not only that, but they also have Vic Beasley against that offensive line. It does not look good for Russell Wilson. Although I will say this, Russell Wilson I think doesn't get nearly enough credit as he deserves in this league. But at the same time, Russell Wilson can only will this team as much as he possibly can. Atlanta, I think Atlanta eases to a fairly easy victory. You?
Yeah, I think it'll be close. I mean, your point about Seattle's secondary struggling since Earl Thomas went out is true. I think Julio Jones and Richard Sherman, that's going to be the key matchup to watch. But there's also you go back and look at the highlights. The Seahawks blew some coverages on underneath throws, and Matt Ryan. This is Evan mentioned a couple weeks ago that this might be his last shot realistically at winning a championship, and this has been his first time in the playoffs in a couple of years. His only playoff win came in 2012 against Seattle, and at the Falcons' number 1 scoring offense made the conference championship in 4 years in a row. So I'm going to go Atlanta. I think it's going to be close. I think Seattle, if they can run the ball and control the clock and keep the scoring low, I think they can win a tight game as they did earlier in the season. But I think the Falcons have too many passing yards in this game. I don't think Seattle keeps up with them in scoring. So
Cool. Yeah. Let's all right. So two on Atlanta. Let's move
yeah,
on to the next one. Pittsburgh versus KC. Another rematch from earlier this season. Who do you think wins this one?
yeah, I'm gonna go Pittsburgh. So the Steelers really last week they dominated the Dolphins, and their offense is just clicking right now. Big Ben has shown he can win, January, February playoff games. He's a little banged up, but I think Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown, that is a lot of speed. And Kansas City's defense really they struggled against teams that had the speed. You think down the stretch they had losses to Tennessee. They got lucky that Oakland blew the AFC West when Derek Carr went down, and so they got a really favorable seeding. But really, I'm not too impressed by the Chiefs. And I mean, you never have to doubt Andy Reid and what his coaching. And Tyreek Hill, I mean, that guy is a speed demon, and teams haven't stopped him this year. So I think he's the X factor for Kansas City. If he can get big plays, I think Kansas City has a shot. But I think the weather also plays a factor. I mean, the cold game, and it's out of the ice in the afternoon, but it's a night game. It's going to be cold, and that favors a ground game. And so I mean, Le'Veon Bell has been fresh down the stretch. That suspension might have actually helped him out. So I'm going to go Pittsburgh.
Agreed. I agree with you. I mean, granted, I don't think it's going to be as big a blowout as it was in the regular season. I will say KC definitely seems to have really been clicking down the stretch this season, especially on defense. Although, like you said, they've been susceptible to a ground game, and Le'Veon Bell is arguably, if not the best running back in the league, is very, very close. That being said, I do think this Kansas City defense at least makes it close. I mean, while the Pittsburgh offensive line is fairly decent with DeCastro and Villanueva, I can't remember Villanueva. I think his name is. I'm very bad with names, but even though they are very good with that, the KC defensive line and just pass rushers in general, like Houston and D Ford, have shown that they can get to the quarterback. And if KC does pull this off, it's going to be because of their defensive line. But I just don't see that happening this game because I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have too many playmakers. They have arguably the greatest 3Bs ever. I'll go with Pittsburgh in this game.
Yeah, so that brings up probably the most anticipated matchup this weekend, and probably will be one of the most watched games this whole season. The Packers play the Cowboys. Green Bay is red hot, 7-game winning streak. They dismantled the Giants defense last week in the wild card game. Cowboys were the best team in the regular season. They come into this game rested, so it's your classic hottest team against the best team. Who do you got?
I got to go with my Cowboys, man. There's really no question. Especially with and while I don't root for players to get injured, like obviously I don't do that, but I think the Green Bay Packers are going to really miss Jordy Nelson. I mean, again, hope he makes a full recovery, but unfortunately for him, he's been ruled out for this game. And while Randall Cobb and Devontae Adams had great games last week, I mean, Randall Cobb had 3 touchdowns. One of which being a great play on him, but like kind of also a terrible play up by the Giants secondary to get that Hail Mary. While they do still have playmakers and still they have a red hot Aaron Rodgers, like I'll be honest, like Aaron Rodgers, I haven't seen Aaron Rodgers play this well, arguably ever, except for maybe during like the Super Bowl season. But I mean, outside of that, I think the Dallas Cowboys, not only will they be able to control the clock with their offensive line and with Ezekiel Elliott, who I think is the best running back in the league, but at the same time they're getting back some of their best playmakers on defense, including Mo Claiborne, who I think will be able to shut down whoever goes on the outside. I think it's going to be Randall Cobb, but we'll see. I think well, that, and also with they have it, the defensive line has been clicking a hell a lot better than it had been at the beginning of the season, and even then they were able to get like 4 sacks and like two forced fumbles on Aaron Rodgers when they first met up earlier this season. David Irving's been playing out of his mind. Sean Lee is motivated. He's finally first time he's ever played in the playoffs, and he's really the heart and soul of this defense and arguably this team. This Dallas Cowboys team, I think, is going to be very focused. That I don't see the Green Bay Packers being able to shut down this run game, even though that's probably going to be all their focus is going to be on. Like even with that knowledge, they're still not going to be able to do it. But that's my take. What about you?
Yeah, I think what you said in regards to the run game, I think is key. I think if Dallas can run the ball effectively and really take the pressure off of Dak Prescott, getting into a shootout with Aaron Rodgers, I think Dallas wins this game. I think the loss of Nelson hurts the Packers. Devontae Adams has to step up. Randall Cobb has to step up. But really, I mean, I see this being a shootout. Both defenses. Dallas's have been better, but they're really built to stop the run. I mean, Green Bay doesn't really run the ball a lick at all, and then Dallas runs the ball really well, and Green Bay can't really plays decent against the run, but their secondary has not been good. So I see it being a shootout, and in a shootout situation, I'm going to go with the hottest quarterback on the planet. And I know this is an upset pick, but and as much as I want to see the Cowboys in Houston, no, I don't. But I'm going to go Green Bay. I'm going to go Green Bay here. Hot quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
I will Cowboys say, fans. Yeah. Well, I will say this though. While I do agree that this Cowboys defense is very adept at stopping the run, I will say that this Cowboys defense is also very, very much built to take away the big play, and that's something that Aaron Rodgers obviously feasts on. I mean, he's also very good at the short and intermediate plays as well, because he's just an incredible quarterback. But I do think this Cowboys defense, because of their ability, because they've executed so well to the philosophy of bending but not breaking, I think they do slow down Aaron Rodgers just enough. But that's just me answering back to the shootout, possible shootout there.
Yeah, and really, I think this game goes down to the wire. I don't see any team really pulling away. I mean, unless Dallas can really just control the clock and limit the number of possessions in this game, which is very likely. But I could see in a situation where it's like the last team that has the ball, wins the game on a field goal, something like that. So
agreed, definitely. But yeah, that anything else you want to add before we talk about the bigger, arguably one of the biggest some of the biggest news items to come out of the NFL, aside from the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's just, as sports fans, hope for a better set of games. Last week's were not really good games at all. They were all double digits, pretty much decided early on. And so let's just hope. Divisional round weekend is usually some of the best games, some of the most shocking upsets. So let's hope that the teams deliver this weekend.
Agreed. But let's move on to some moving, arguably some breaking news too. But some arguably the biggest news this week, outside of the preparation for the next round of the NFL playoffs, has been the San Diego Chargers announcing they'll no longer be in San Diego, but moving to LA. I know you wrote a piece on this on your sports blog, which you can link into the description. Why don't you just touch on your thoughts on this, as well as also the possibility that the Oakland Raiders might turn their backs on the city that they've known for the past 30 to 40 years and head out to LV Las Vegas.
Yeah, so I wrote on the blog and you can read more about it, but the San Diego Chargers have been in that community for 55 years. It's not like a situation with St. Louis where it was a 20-year relationship, and I still feel bad for St. Louis, but LA had the Rams for a longer period of time. There's still Rams fans there, and so that, while it was messy, made some sense. And the NFL wanting a team in LA, the second largest media market in the country. But this doesn't make any sense. Okay, so the owner, this is professional sports where billionaire owners can lobby the communities and hardworking American taxpayers to beg them to fund their jewel stadiums where they collect all the revenue. I mean, the public doesn't get a dime from all the concessions, ticket sales, merchandise, any of that. So they beg the public for public money so that they can build a stadium, or they threaten to move. And so this is another classic. Spanos got actually $300 million from the NFL, which is unheard of amount to keep that team there. And he kept begging for more money, and in the end, the taxpayers, they had a vote on this. They declined his measure. San Diego as a city, from what I read, is not doing well in terms of some of their public utilities and their schools and that sort of thing. So you got to put the money in this and spend it in a smart manner. And so Spanos felt like he had no choice but to move to LA. But so you have to understand, he has to pay $650 million in relocation fees to move his team. If he spent that money plus the $300 million the NFL gave him, plus a little bit of the public money, he could have easily had a stadium there. But this is just classic greed. LA, bigger market, supposedly. I really think it's going to be a struggle for them. There's no fan base there for the Chargers. There never has been. They played one season there, and then they moved. The Raiders, they have a big Raider fan base there. Raiders are in the same division as the Chargers. It's going to be a really tough sell to convert a team that you rooted against for all those years to root for. And the LA market in general is saturated. So there's 2 baseball teams there, 2 basketball teams. There's a hockey team. There's a soccer team. There's another soccer team coming. There's 2 marquee colleges with college football and college basketball. And there's a general Hollywood, movies and shows and that entertainment aspect. And you look at what the Rams did, even with their history there, they really struggled getting fans to come out to games after the first part of the season. And with no history there and, really a lack of success, they really are going to have to be immediately successful and then hopefully gather some bandwagon and, everybody wants to support a winner, that sort of thing, immediately. Because if the Rams get turned around faster than them, why would I root for the Chargers, who are a worse team, have no history here? I have no ties from my family ever rooting for them. I would just go for the Rams if I'm going to watch NFL football. So, this is just a disaster, I think, by the NFL. Roger Goodell can say all he wants about we did our best and, Spanos did his very best to keep the team there. That's a bunch of bull, and I think he knows it. The NFL owners just really, the lack of tone depth they possess. Robert Kraft had a quote where he said, the fans can basically drive out and still support the team. Who the hell is going to drive 2 hours on the highway to a team that left your city and has the name of your rival city to the north? And that's absolutely ridiculous. So Robert Kraft has no idea what he's talking about. And I think a bigger point is, I think at some point, Marc Cuban talked about this a couple of years ago. At some point, when things get too big, people are just going to turn away. And the level of greed, there's a limit. And what the NFL has done with this relocation nonsense, Thursday night football, expansion of London games, talking about they've tried to expand the playoffs for 5 years, and people are saying it might eventually happen anyways. it's all greed, and there's no justification other than that. And it's still the most popular sport, and it's going to be for a while. But at some point, I don't see this continuing. What do you think?
Agreed, 100%. Thank you. That was, again, like, huge round of applause. Thank you. Like, that exactly pretty much sums up like my feelings on this too. Is, I mean, and it goes beyond just that. It's just that like not only are they out of touch, but they're like pretty much they're turning their backs on what made like football most popular sport in the first place, which is the fact that they really built themselves on appealing towards the working class and just appealing towards this people towards working class communities, and it just seems like they're completely turning back on it. Not only are they just out of touch, but they're just like playing for amongst themselves. Like they're chasing this money that doesn't, to me, just doesn't seem to exist, in terms of just trying to appeal to like these to kind of like these like financial elites who, for all intents and purposes, don't really care all that much about football, and not only that, but it's a smaller market than just like we're focusing on just like the working class and the middle class who actually do watch these games.
Yeah, and it's like, how far can we, like, how badly can we treat the fans and keep getting away with it, is basically what I'm feeling. Like let's charge them these like ridiculous, private seat licenses. Let's put games on weeknight, Monday night, Thursday night. Let's pull home games away from, local communities and put them in London and Mexico City. I mean, it's like, how far can we go before, and the fans keep, taking it before they revolt? And so far it's worked. I mean, the NFL is still by far the most popular sport, but I do think, safety concerns, they've had domestic violence problems, and just this general greed grab that continues, with no end in sight, is going to reach a point where people are turned off by it. That logo, by the way, is hideous. The Tampa Bay Lightning had a tweet where they were saying, "We and the Dodgers are just friends," which I thought was hilarious. But we'll see how it turns out. And this Las Vegas mess as well, how that turns out. The Raiders still have to get some investors in that area, and so that's not a done deal yet. But Las Vegas getting a hockey team, so that they might be a two-sport town now in the upcoming future. But let's talk about the Rockets. They had a 2-2 week. They had a really good win in Toronto, where they came back. Montrezl Harrell had a career-high 28 points. And then they followed that up with a win over the Hornets. James Harden put up back-to-back 40-point triple-doubles, which is a rare feat in NBA history. And then they closed the week with two, you could say, bad losses. They got blown out by the Timberwolves on a back-to-back. And then they lost last night in a game where they had a big lead and they kind of blew it. They didn't shoot the ball well against the Memphis Grizzlies. And so Rockets are 31-11. They really, I mean, that's surpassed all our expectations coming into this year. I think looking ahead, very much ahead to the playoffs, I think the matchup will really determine how far this team goes. I think they really do need Clint Capella to come back. They've struggled against bigger teams, especially in the rebounding department. And so if they end up facing a Memphis in the playoffs, it might be a bit of a struggle. But I was listening to the radio this week and really thinking about it. The Rockets have a legitimate contenders for MVP, Coach of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, and Executive of the Year, if you think about it. And so that really the turnaround that they've had this year has been really fun to watch. So let's talk about the Mavs briefly. So Marc Cuban's been in the news.
He has, as he would like. He's so apparent. So the one that I definitely saw was that the refs, after pretty much like Marc Cuban's entire tenure as an owner, has had a pretty tenuous relationship when it comes to the refs. but it looks like the refs have finally taken a stand and have gone to the NBA commissioner and said that Mark Cuban and have accused Mark Cuban of trying to intimidate them, which I can't really disagree about because I mean, like, at every game he's at courtside. He's usually yelling at the refs. I mean, he's that being said, like, he's just like any other fan in some sense, but at the same time he's not really like any other fan in terms of the fact that he's a multimillionaire, billionaire, I believe, also,
Yes.
who owns the team, and has pretty much a stake in terms of like whether in how these refs get paid. And so I think it's fair for the refs to try to get Mark Cuban away from them, and maybe up in, like, the owner's box or something like that. I mean, and granted, I know it's like kind of part of Mark Cuban's style to be like he's of the people. He's just a fan who has billions of dollars and is living out every fan's dream of owning a team. But at the same time, like, you can't be doing that, man. It gets in the way of the product. And not only that, I mean, the best that the Mavs have had, the best season that the Mavs have had was when Mark Cuban was also, like, decided to be completely silent, and not run his mouth off as much. And so he's, like, aware also that, like, he can kind of get in the way of his own team. And so I think at a certain point he's got to just, like, take a step back and be like, okay, like, I've already won my team's already won a championship. Like, I'm just going to focus on my own things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he just constantly has to be in the news. I mean, the team isn't doing well, obviously, this year, and a little bit of what Evan said last week with the schedule being very favorable, that hasn't really turned out well. You guys lost two bad games last week, but my thoughts, I've never really liked Mark Cuban personally. He had that verbal spat with our GM Daryl Morey a couple of years ago, when they were, battling over signing free agents. But I've always respected him for especially what he's done in his career as an entrepreneur, really building himself into a billionaire from nothing. I really respected that, and what he's done with the Mavs since he's been an owner. And building that team every year to be a contender. It's been a couple hard times the past couple of years, which I've enjoyed personally as a Rockets fan. But I think it's just really surprised me that it's taking this long for them to say anything, given that he's done this for decades, it seems now. So
Yeah.
I want to touch briefly on the NBA All-Star voting. So there's a couple days left to vote. The league made a decision to take 50% of the power for the starters away from the fans. And I think, given these voting results, I think that's completely justified. I think right now Zaza Pachulia is second among NBA Western Conference forwards. They actually asked him on NBA TV, "Do you think you should be an All-Star?" And he was like, "Absolutely not." But I guess there's just ballot stuffers, and this is a problem in baseball as well. But briefly, what I think the West is pretty, other than Zaza, who I think will be swapped with Anthony Davis when it's all said and done. I think Harden and Westbrook really should be the starting guards. Curry just has a tremendous fan base, and given his past two MVP years, I think that's okay. But you would want Harden and Westbrook in there. Durant has had a great year for Golden State. He leads them in scoring. Kawhi Leonard as well for the Spurs. They're second in the West, and he's really the growth in his game the past couple of years has been outstanding. And obviously Anthony Davis, he's putting up insane numbers on a Pelicans team that is really bad, and he faces double and triple teams every night, and he still puts up those numbers. So I would put him in there. In the East, LeBron, obviously, every year. Giannis Antetokounmpo is second in voting. I think that's well-deserved. He's really improved his game. I think he might win NBA Most Improved Player this year. Right now, the fans have Kyrie Irving and Dwayne Wade. I would have Kyle Lowry and Kemba Walker. I think Kemba has really been under the radar, but he's been playing the best basketball of his career for Charlotte, keeping them afloat in 7-8 in the East. And Lowry, playing in Toronto, he doesn't really get the American audience, but I mean, he's been one of the best point guards in the league for a couple of years now, and it seems like he still doesn't really get the respect he deserves. And I would swap out Kevin Love, who's third, for Jimmy Butler, who I think, again, he stepped his game up in Chicago with Derrick Rose leaving. It's really his team now. I would go Butler for the final spot in the East. Other than that, let's finish up with some shout outs. Clemson won the national championship on Monday night. Really a great game, and we both correctly picked it.
Yes, we did. Unlike Evan, and that's why he's not here, Rudo. But no,
got fired.
Yeah. But no, it was an amazing game. I mean, granted, like the past 5 years have put out some very, very good games in terms of national championships. But this one was arguably just as good as the USC versus Texas one, which almost everyone agrees. Like even outside of the two fan bases in Texas and California, believes is one of the best, if not the best, national championships of all time. It was up there. I think there were like 5 to 6 like lead changes within like the last at least the fourth quarter, but there were lead changes in like the last 2 minutes, like 3 lead changes in the last 2 minutes, I believe. If I mean, it was happening so quickly, but it was fantastic. Deshaun Watson cemented his legacy as one of the best college players of all time. He in Alabama, going against a defense that had as many like potential like NFL stars as the one that Alabama had, and being able to pull it out the way that he did is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think Alabama is going to regret everything that happened with their offensive coordinator position and Lane Kiffin leaving and all the mess with that. I think in hindsight they probably would change how that turned out. But congrats to Clemson and Alabama getting dethroned. It's always good to have the underdog lift the trophy. I think other shout outs, I think the Astros made a little bit of news this week. Dallas Keuchel got a $9.1 million contract for this upcoming year. He got a little bit of a raise, and so congrats to Keuchel. Hopefully he can be healthy this year, and the Astros can do really good things in the AL West. Alex Bregman, their young infielder, is going to be representing the USA in the World Baseball Classic coming up, and so congrats to Bregman. The Astros are going to have 6 players in the World Baseball Classic. Jose Altuve will be playing for Venezuela, Carlos Correa for Puerto Rico, Carlos Beltran for Puerto Rico, Norioki Aoki for Japan, and Luke Gregerson for the U.S. So good luck to all those players in their respective countries. And finally, for me, the MLS draft was yesterday. So the Dynamo picked up midfielder Joe Holland, goalkeeper Jake McGuire, defender Danilo Rajin. And they also made a trade to get defender AJ De La Garza from the LA Galaxy. So welcome those players to Houston. Hopefully they do good things in 2017 and turn around that team that was really bad last year.
Oh yeah, definitely. And a shout out to Tyson Ross, who just signed with the Rangers. I know he's come off an injury-riddled season last year, and he's already 30, so it's not looking good. But that being said, he's had very solid seasons, like within the last 4 years he's had. I mean, he was an all-star in 2014, but even then he's had an ERA plus of over 100 in 4 of his seasons. And so, I mean, he's definitely worth taking a flyer on. I mean, it looks like this is going to be the replacement for Colby Lewis, who I guess is not coming back, which is unfortunate considering that he's had so much success with the Rangers and was kind of like our postseason Sandy Koufax for a bit. during our World Series runs, except for unfortunately when we most needed him to be postseason Sandy Koufax, which was Game 6 of 2011. But it's neither here nor there anymore. Ha 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 ha. But yeah, welcome to the team. Hope you can reestablish yourself and return back to form. I guess that's pretty much about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to Matt Coleman. He's a top 100 ESPN top 100 basketball prospect. He's going to announce whether he goes to Duke or Texas on Monday. I know Shaka Smart has had a really bad season this year. The leading scorer, Tevin Mack, just got suspended, and the team, lost to TCU this past week, and they have really 3 top 10 teams with West Virginia, Baylor, and Kansas coming up. So it's not looking good for them, but Matt Coleman will welcome you to Texas with open arms. So good luck with your decision on Monday.
Oh, for sure, definitely. And if there's at least like one like inroad, it's that Shaka did coach him, along with a lot of like top prospects at the U.S. under 18 for the U.S. under 18 team. So if Matt Coleman like has a very strong relationship with him based off that, I mean, I wouldn't say no. I mean, I wouldn't exactly blame this season on the coaching of Shaka Smart. But we'll see. What's your take on the season? How much blame do you put on Shaka Smart? Just to quickly wrap it up.
Well, I mean, there's no question Shaka can coach. I think it's just this team just lacks veterans. There's just too many young players, and the growing pains are there. And it's just kind of a lost season. I mean, this team is not going to make any tournament at the end of the year, but I think the rest of the year is just really growth from those young players. And the Big 12 is where you get tested the most with so many great teams. And so just continue growth every day in practice, every game, every new situation from those players, I think will help going into next year.
Agreed. Okay. All right. Well, that wraps it up for this week. Talk to you later.